Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the BFNL Footy Show for another week on the eve of Week 2 of the 2016 McDonald's Final Series. And of course, we thank McDonald's Ballarat along with Ballarat Toyota for their fantastic support of the BFNL Footy Show this year. Sean Kelly's my name. Joining me, as he does every week, Liam Brady from AFL Victoria. Brades, welcome, mate.
Shawnee, it's good to be here once again this week, mate. Looking forward to previewing the two big clashes and looking back at last weekend's results and a couple of interesting ones to look at.
Yeah, there certainly was indeed, and we'll jump straight into it. Our first talking point for the week. The qualifying final last week at halftime, it looked like Lake Wendouree was set and ready to move into a second semi-final, but things didn't go their way after halftime. Bacchus Marsh picked up their game and ended up running away with what was a pretty comfortable 41-point win.
Yeah, it was a really good result for Bacchus Marsh. They obviously came in after halftime and played some great footy. Lake Wendouree played reasonable footy in the first half and would have gone into halftime with a fair bit of confidence, but certainly didn't come out to play after halftime. They kicked out 2 or 3 points in the second half, and Bacchus Marsh were really convincing. I wasn't there, but just speaking to a few people that were there, they were very impressive. So Lake Wendouree, they finish on top, so they get the second chance now. They need to bounce back this week. But a few players were down for Lake Wendouree in the weekend, in particular Andrew Pitson, who's been in great form all year.
Had a great year.
Had a very good year. It was very, very disappointing in the weekend. Certainly players need to stand up in big games. He's a player that would be very disappointed with his own game last weekend. I think they need him to bounce back this weekend. Also, Scott Carey, I thought, went into the game with a bit of an injury cloud.
Yeah, a bit of an arm injury, wasn't it?
A bit of an arm injury. Whether he should have played or not, I'm not too sure. But he was very lacklustre as well. So hopefully, for Lake Wendouree, those two players can certainly lift their game moving on to this weekend.
Yeah, you'd hope so, because a pretty big game for the Lakers that we'll talk about later on in the show. Talking point number 2, moving into the first elimination final at Darley Park on the weekend between Darley and Sunbury. This game had it all. There's absolutely no doubt about it, but Sunbury in the end weathering a few blows and also withstanding a Darley comeback to run away and move their way into a second semi-final this week.
Yeah, look, no real surprises here, I don't think. Sunbury went into this game as hot favourites, and we think they were 6 or 7 goals up a quarter time, so the game was over then, really. And they've had a really, a soft win, I suppose you could say. I think that'll hold them in good stead for the rest of the finals campaign. They'll give themselves a huge chance this weekend against Bacchus Marsh. Really pleasing for both sides. They're playing at the Eastern Oval. We know that the grand final's obviously there, so they'll be pleased to play at the home of Ballarat Footy, I suppose you could say. I think that they'll take a lot of confidence out of the win on the weekend, but I think Bacchus Marsh might be a bit too strong, but we'll talk about that game in a minute.
We will indeed, because we'll get to talking point number 3 first, which was the other elimination final being held last weekend, and in many ways it was a carbon copy of the game played at the Eastern Oval on the Saturday. North Ballarat City looked good in the first quarter, went okay in the second quarter, held a narrow lead at half-time, but then did not find the big sticks at all in the second half as Redan came over the top for an elimination final victory that was full of merit.
Yeah, there wasn't too much in this game. I just think that North wasted the opportunity in front of goal. At one stage they were 6 goals, 16, and it's really hurt. It's really frustrating for the midfielders to get the ball forward and not been able to capitalise on their hard work. So, look, as you said, Redan came out after half time and played some good footy. We know that they've fallen away in prelim finals in the last couple of years, so they'll be looking to at least get to the prelim final this year. I think they're a big chance against Lakers this weekend, but they'll be pleased. I think Gilly will be pleased with the way they played in the second half of the weekend, and they can go to this weekend with a lot of confidence in taking up to Lake Wendouree.
Yeah, I think you're right indeed. So let's have a look at this weekend. Semi-final weekend in the Red Onion Creative Ballarat Football and Netball League, the second week of the 2016 McDonald's Final Series. Make sure I get all the sponsor plugs in there to keep Nunny happy. Under 18.5 footy, East Point taking on Bacchus Marsh. In the reserves, it's Redan taking on Sunbury. And then the senior game, second semi-final, Bacchus Marsh taking on Sunbury. One of these teams, Liam Brady, will be going into a grand final after this game.
Yeah, they will be, Shawnee. It's a do or die battle, isn't it? And I think the thing about I suppose this weekend is that with the Saturday second semi-final, it's probably not as much pressure on either side.
You can take a risk or two because you know that if things do go wrong and the risk doesn't come off, there is always next week. If the risk does come off, though, geez, you can pay some dividends.
And the first semi-final, as we know, it's you make a mistake and it could be season over. Exactly. So it just provides so much I suppose intrigue into this weekend. I'm looking forward to watching the Sunbury and Bacchus Marsh game. Who would have thought these two sides would have been playing in the second semi-final at the start of the season, especially Bacchus Marsh, I suppose. It's just great to see one of these sides will progress through to the grand final this time next week.
Who are you tipping?
I'm tipping Bacchus Marsh just based on the way they've played the last 2 or 3 weeks. I was really impressed with the way they played against Lake Wendouree in the last game of the home and away season. They fought their way back into the game, hit the front, and were probably pretty stiff to get beaten. And just their second half on the weekend was outstanding. They've been able to add a few experienced players into their side. Jared Maximo and obviously Damien Cupido have been pretty good for them. And
Maximo is a real X-factor kind of player as well, I reckon. Yeah. He's one of those blokes that could kick 2 or 3 in a couple of minutes and really turn a game.
He's been kicking goals, that's the thing about it. So, and they're younger, well, we say younger players, but those players have been there for quite some time now.
Yeah.
They've played a lot of footy together, so I think that they'll be a fraction too strong for a Sunbury side who's coming into the game with a lot of confidence. But Sunbury, as we know, if they do get beaten, they'll front up next week.
And they will indeed. They'll front up next week. If they get beaten, the loser of this game will play in a preliminary final next week against the winner of Sunday's first semi-final. In the under-18s, it's Redan taking on North Ballarat City. In the reserves, it's East Point taking on Bacchus Marsh, and then the senior game, Lake Wendouree versus Redan on Sunday afternoon at the Eastern Oval. This should be a pretty good game.
I should change my tip in this game, Sean. I have said Lake Wendouree
earlier in the week when we were speaking about it.
And I think Redan will win this game now. I think that, I'm not too sure why I've changed my mind, but I just think that Redan's second half of the weekend was very good, and there's an enormous amount of pressure on Lake Wendouree. If they can hold up to that pressure of not going any straight sets, and I'll be mentioned about a few players that were down on form last week that have played pretty good footy throughout the year. They need to change their form around. I'm not too sure whether they can in the space of a week, whether they're carrying any injuries or so forth. So I think that Redan will win this game by a very, very small margin, but it should be a great contest.
You speak of injuries. Nathan Pring named as an emergency for Lake Wendouree. Does he come into the side?
I don't think you're playing him. I think he's, unless he's 100% fit. I think that we know what sort of player Nathan Pring is. He's a very, very good player who adds a lot to the Lake Wendouree side, but he hasn't played for 10 weeks. He's hardly trained. He may have trained a little bit the last 7 or 8 days. Is that enough to bring him into a cutthroat final? I'm not too sure it is. I think that you just go in. They played okay without him.
Yep.
I just think you go in with blokes who are 100% fit, taking injured players, taking players that are underdone into finals.
It's fraught with danger.
It's fraught with danger, and teams have come unstuck doing that in the past. I'm not saying that he is underdone. He may be 100% fit. If he is, he plays. I haven't got that inside knowledge, but just looking from afar, I wouldn't play him if he's not quite right.
Should be a great weekend of football throughout the Ballarat Football and Netball League. Of course, junior preliminary finals being played on Sunday as well. So if senior football isn't your bag, or you've had your fix of senior footy on Saturday, head out to Wendouree Reserve and the Northern Oval on Sunday. Northern Oval number 2, of course, for the junior preliminary finals. Should be a big week. Liam, thanks for joining us once again.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Sean.
And it's always a pleasure having you joining us on the BFNL Footy Show. We'll see you again next week for our preliminary final edition. We'll see you then.
See you. Goodbye for now.